Hello, I'm a woman in my late 40s. Recently, something unimaginable happened in my life, and I'm going to share it here. Once, my dream was to become a novelist. I grew up as the youngest of 3 siblings in a financially challenging household, where we had only a few storybooks. When I was in elementary school, I visited a friend's house, where they had a full collection of books. I was so envious that I had a burning desire to borrow and read those books. But we were poor and our house was small. We couldn't afford to buy a full set of storybooks. I was very introverted and wanted to ask my friend to lend me the books, but I couldn't muster the courage. All 3 of us siblings loved to read the few books we had at home over and over again. Before I fell asleep, I used to imagine scenes from the storybooks I had just read, and I would plunge into dreamland as if I were the protagonist of the story. When I became a middle school student and started receiving an allowance, I would rush to the bookstore, buy novels, and read them. My peers spent their money on snacks and other trifles, but I didn't consider spending my money that way. When I was in college, rental bookstores became a thing, and during vacations, I went there to borrow as many books as I wanted for a small fee. During the semester, I borrowed various books and felt thrilled as I read them. I felt like a rich person when I had a pile of books, and I used to meet my friends and talk about the popular books at the time. Even when my mom called me to the kitchen to eat, I would say that I would eat after reading one more page. So immersed was I in reading. Books were my life and everything. I wanted to major in Korean literature, but I couldn't. And somehow, I got married, had 2 children, and when my children became middle school students, I had more time for myself. I found a post about a book club in a local cafe and was thrilled. I immediately signed up and attended the book club. The book club was held at the city library, where we selected various books to read and share every week, and I cherished and looked forward to those meetings. The book club met once a week for 2 hours on Wednesdays, and mostly middle-aged women like me attended, with one young lady in her 20s. The person called the leader was a man who looked to be in his late 20s. His name was Jacob. Jacob created a group chat for the book club members to share announcements and check attendance, and it was a very lively atmosphere. About a year after I joined the book club, after one meeting, I found out that Jacob lived in the same apartment complex as me. I'm introverted, so I always hurried home after the meetings. I didn't even know where anyone lived, and I didn't contact any members outside of the meeting. Jacob had brought his car and suggested that we go home together. I didn't really want to, and said I could just take the bus home, but he insisted that it was silly to go separately when we lived in the same apartment complex and persuaded me to get in the car. As soon as I got in the car, I was surprised because the atmosphere was different from my husband's car. Jacob's car was very clean, not a speck of dust. I said it was pretty clean for a man's car, and he just smiled and said that cleaning was his hobby. My husband is the type to just take care of his own business. But Jacob was not like that. Our journey home was unusually long. We chatted about this and that on the way. Jacob, in his early 30s, worked as a freelancer from home. When I asked Jacob if he was married, he said his wife had passed away in an unfortunate accident 3 years after they married. He said he couldn't move out of the house because it still held memories of his wife, and he lived there alone. I thought Jacob must be very lonely. When it comes to making friends, I'm the type to maintain long-lasting relationship with one person who I really connect with. Being in a group with many people is too awkward and exhausting for me. But somehow, I found the courage to ask Jacob if he liked cucumber kimchi. Jacob said his favorite side dishes were cucumber kimchi and radish water kimchi. I had some cucumber kimchi that I made yesterday at home, so I told him to wait for me in the underground parking lot while I went to fetch it. Jacob waited for me in the parking lot, and I thanked him for the ride home, gave him the cucumber kimchi and some chocolate. But then, didn't Jacob tightly hold my hand that was passing him the side dish? The strength of his grip was truly surprising. I was taken aback and tried to subtly pull my hand away, but he tightened his grip and said, "Sister, I have a lot of books at my place. Why don't you come in and take a look?" I couldn't resist the lure of books and ended up going into Jacob's house. His home was impeccably tidy, so much so that it was hard to believe a man lived there alone. Jacob told me to look around his library, and while browsing the books, I found a novel that I had enjoyed in my early 20s. The novel had been made into a movie, and I remembered crying in the theater as I watched it. I was so glad to see the book that I asked Jacob, "Can I borrow this book?" But Jacob winked at me and said, "No," while holding my hand and leading me to the sofa. He stroked my hair and said, "I've been watching you for a year. I've never seen a member as quiet and girlish as you. But when I saw the member list, I saw that we live in the same apartment. I had a burning desire to get close to you, but I held it in. I never thought I would be attracted to a woman much older than me. Please help this lonely widower." I couldn't have imagined such a situation, but I opened my heart to his persistent persuasion, and we soon became one. I don't know what his real life is like, but I want to believe that at least the heart he shows me is sincere. My husband, while outwardly a good husband, is someone who makes me feel lonely. My husband is 2 years older than me. He was very active when we were dating to the point of being annoying, but after we got married and had kids, he started avoiding marital relations. I asked a friend, and she said she made love with her husband once or twice a week. It's been 2 years since I even held hands with him. After having our first child, we naturally started sleeping in separate rooms. But we were young then, and we fulfilled our marital duties once a month. However, things changed when we started having our second child, and we grew more distant. While raising our second child, it became a question of whether we would even make love once a year. With 2 kids, it was hard to find the right timing to create a romantic atmosphere with my husband, and many things just fell by the wayside. So here I am, living as a nominal couple. Let me know if you need any other translations or assistance. However, after working with Jacob, I was left with a lot to think about. The first thing was time. My husband is the type to just focus on his own tasks and complete them, but Jacob was different. The time we spent together was unusually long. Later, I realized it was Jacob's consideration that made our time together extend, and I found myself visiting Jacob's house almost daily. When I visited Jacob's house, I'd bring a newly made side dish and we'd have a meal together. Jacob confessed his love to me, saying that eating with a beautiful sister like me every day made him feel good. I also confessed my love to Jacob. My husband leaves work promptly at 7 p.m. every day. After dinner, he goes to a badminton club at 8 p.m. He's been into his workout routine for quite some time, taking lessons twice a week and attending the club meetings 4 times. He plays badminton 6 days a week and occasionally has dinner with club members. He exercises so intensely every day that he goes straight to bed after washing up when he gets home. It's been a while since my husband, and I found it more comfortable to sleep separately. I asked Jacob how he felt about dating an older woman like me. He said, "Age doesn't matter because you're so beautiful and we get along well. I've only dated younger women until now, but I felt a mature charm from you. I have a friend who married a woman much older, and I think I understand why he did," he said, laughing. I felt good, sensing Jacob's feelings. These days, I find myself humming a tune as I share love with Jacob, who is almost 20 years younger than me. Even the daily text messages we exchange are purely joyful. However, one day on T, they listed several characteristics of people who are having affairs. They smile alone while looking at their phones. They never put their phones down. They put patterns on their phones and only look at them alone. They start to care about their appearance and gradually pay less attention to their children. I realized I've been living like that lately, but I'm determined to protect this family. I've never thought about living with Jacob. I just think it's ok as long as we don't get caught. It gives me chills to realize that I'm thinking this selfishly. Actually, I want to tell my closest friend that I'm living like this these days. There's a statistic that half of married people are seeing someone of the opposite sex, but I can't believe it. Someday, there will be a situation where I have to end things with Jacob. I'll regret my actions then, but I don't want to think about it now. Thanks to my young and fresh boyfriend, every day is a joy.